A new international dispute has erupted, drawing attention from both sides of the border and raising concerns among officials, travelers, and businesses alike. The conflict centers on access to Alaska, a region uniquely positioned and reliant on cooperation between the United States and Canada for overland travel and trade. On August 5, 2025, the Canadian government announced and implemented strict new travel restrictions through its territory. These measures have disrupted the main land route, the historic Alaska Highway, that connects Alaska to the lower 48 states, effectively creating a bottleneck for anyone trying to move goods or travel between these regions. According to Canadian officials, the decision was driven by a need to protect sensitive environmental areas and to honor obligations to Indigenous First Nations. These groups have long voiced concerns about the impact of heavy traffic and development on their ancestral lands, and the government now says it is acting in response to those calls. While the restrictions stop short of a complete shutdown, they have already caused significant and immediate challenges. Commercial truck drivers face long delays, military convoys are forced to reroute, and civilian travelers find themselves stranded or forced to make complicated detours. Ottawa maintains that it is exercising its sovereign right to manage infrastructure and protect the environment. The government emphasizes that these decisions were made after extensive consultations with First Nations leaders who have expressed growing unease about the effects of increased traffic on their lands and the surrounding wilderness. Although officials describe the new rules as temporary, the uncertainty has left many people anxious. Those who depend on this vital passage for their livelihoods or family connections are now unsure how long the disruption will last or what further changes might be coming. The Alaska Highway, once celebrated as a symbol of U.S.-Canadian cooperation during World War II, now finds itself at the heart of a diplomatic standoff. New layers of bureaucracy, increased inspections, and unpredictable delays threaten the efficiency and reliability that travelers and businesses have come to expect. In response to growing tensions, Canada has signaled a willingness to negotiate and find a solution. However, the initial imposition of restrictions has already strained the historically stable relationship between the two countries, prompting urgent diplomatic talks. The unique geography of Alaska, separated from the rest of the United States by vast stretches of Canadian territory, adds layers of complexity to the dispute. For Alaskans, the only practical land route to the rest of their country now lies in limbo. Decades of smooth cross-border cooperation built on trust and mutual benefit are now at risk. Both nations must weigh their legal rights and responsibilities against the deep economic and social interdependence that has defined their relationship for generations. As the situation unfolds, both governments face mounting pressure to find a path forward, one that respects national sovereignty, honors Indigenous voices, and preserves the vital ties that bind their shared border. The world watches closely, aware that the outcome could reshape the future of North American cooperation. The U.S. response to Canada's controversial policy was immediate and forceful, spearheaded by former President Donald Trump, who wasted no time in making his position clear to both the American public and the world. Trump condemned Canada's move as not just unfriendly, but outright hostile, framing it as a direct challenge to American sovereignty and economic interests. His rhetoric quickly escalated the dispute, with Trump openly targeting Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, accusing him of undermining the long-standing alliance between the two nations. He painted the issue as an attack on American values and jobs, stirring up strong emotions on both sides of the border. Trump's calls for tough retaliatory measures, including the imposition of new tariffs, have put significant pressure on current U.S. officials. This has further polarized the debate, with lawmakers and citizens split along party lines over how to respond. The already tense political climate has made diplomatic negotiations increasingly difficult. Every proposed solution is now scrutinized through a partisan lens, making compromise seem nearly impossible. Although most legal experts agree that Canada is technically within its rights, Trump's narrative of unfairness and betrayal has fueled widespread public anger and mistrust, both in the U.S. and Canada. The conflict has now become highly contentious, with each side digging in their heels. The once strong U.S.-Canada partnership is under real threat, as mutual suspicion and frustration grow. Canadian leaders, feeling the weight of both domestic and international pressure, have responded with even greater resolve. Their determination to stand firm has only deepened the standoff, making reconciliation more elusive. Meanwhile, The original issues at the heart of the dispute, environmental protection and indigenous rights, are at risk of being completely overshadowed by the political posturing and heated rhetoric on both sides. The result is a more entrenched and volatile conflict, where practical solutions are increasingly obscured by nationalistic fervor and political grandstanding, leaving the future of US-Canada relations uncertain. In response to US pressure, British Columbia announced plans to impose significant tolls on commercial traffic to and from Alaska. This move is a calculated countermeasure, signaling that Canada's provinces won't be intimidated by US threats. The tolls would raise costs for industries and consumers in Alaska, further straining supply chains. The proposal escalates the conflict, involving provincial authority and complicating resolution. Business leaders on both sides are alarmed, anticipating higher prices and economic fallout. The tolls target the economic interests most vocal about access, serving as both a defensive measure and bargaining chip. This development highlights the power provinces hold over infrastructure and the growing complexity of the dispute. The stakes are now higher, with economic retaliation looming over negotiations. In a decisive move to ease rising tensions, Alaska's State House has taken a bold step by passing a bipartisan resolution. This measure formally recognizes Canadian sovereignty and calls for renewed cooperation between the two neighbors. Lawmakers from both parties came together, setting aside differences to send a clear message. Alaska values diplomacy over discord. The resolution strongly condemns recent restrictive trade actions, which have threatened to disrupt the long-standing relationship between Alaska and Canada. It underscores Alaska's deep historic ties with its northern neighbor, especially the Yukon, where families, businesses, and communities have been intertwined for generations. Importantly, the resolution highlights the shared indigenous heritage that unites people on both sides of the border. It recognizes the enduring value of partnership, mutual respect, and cultural exchange, emphasizing that collaboration is far more productive than confrontation. The measure, which is widely expected to pass the Alaska Senate, will soon be formally sent to leaders in the US federal government, Canadian officials, and key provincial authorities. This ensures that the voices of Alaskans are heard at the highest levels. While the resolution is largely symbolic, it serves as a public declaration of Alaska's strong desire for a peaceful, negotiated settlement. It signals to both nations that Alaska is committed to finding common ground. This approach stands in stark contrast to the more heated rhetoric often heard at the national level. Alaska's leaders are making it clear that they are dedicated to preserving the state's unique and valuable alliance with Canada, even when national politics threaten to complicate matters. The resolution also acknowledges Canadian concerns, showing empathy and understanding, while firmly pushing back against any measures that could harm Alaska's economy or disrupt vital cross-border trade. By leading with respect, open communication, and a spirit of partnership, Alaska hopes to create space for reasonable dialogue and constructive negotiations that benefit both sides. Ultimately, this is an appeal to the shared values and practical interests that have long defined the Alaska-Canada relationship. The goal is to steer the conversation away from conflict and back toward practical, mutually beneficial problem-solving. Alaska's message is clear: this partnership is too important to sacrifice. The state is determined to protect and strengthen its ties with Canada for the benefit of both peoples, now and in the future. The economic impact of Canada's restrictions was immediate, disrupting supply chains between Alaska and the Yukon. Truckers now face costly delays, threatening the stability of essential goods delivery. Proposed tolls by British Columbia would further increase costs, raising prices for Alaskans. Beyond economics, the dispute strains deep personal and cultural ties between border communities. Military families and cross-border events like the Arctic Winter Games are affected, eroding a sense of normalcy. Uncertainty about the future chills investment and hinders long-term planning. Individuals face disrupted family visits, vacations, and educational opportunities. The dispute reveals the deep interdependence of Alaskan and Canadian northern economies and societies. Actions in Ottawa and rhetoric from Washington have direct, far-reaching consequences for daily life. The intricate web of cross-border relationships is now being tested by shifting international politics. At the heart of the conflict is national sovereignty. Canada is legally entitled to regulate its transportation networks and protect Indigenous land rights. While disruptive for the US, Canada's actions are grounded in domestic law and international precedent. The US faces a diplomatic dilemma, balancing Alaska's needs with respect for Canadian sovereignty. Many US officials advocate for negotiation, recognizing the legal complexities. The dispute highlights how domestic priorities can have major international repercussions. Resolving this will require nuanced negotiation that respects all parties, including indigenous communities. Advocates for peace point to a long history of Alaska-Canada cooperation. Yukon Premier Ranj Pillai and others highlight decades of joint projects, cultural festivals, and emergency agreements. Organizations like the Pacific Northwest Economic Region stress that collaboration, not confrontation, is key to addressing shared challenges. The Alaska State House resolution embodies this spirit, honoring indigenous ties and mutual reliance. The Alaska Highway itself is a testament to what the two nations can achieve together. From salmon management to Arctic research, the partnership has been a model of international relations. Supporters hope this legacy will guide leaders back to collaboration. The best path forward is focused, pragmatic diplomacy. Behind the scenes, US and Canadian officials are seeking compromise. Solutions could include regulated transit corridors or scheduled convoys to balance environmental and economic needs. Success depends on moving past heated rhetoric and working collaboratively. This dispute is a reminder of the partnership's vulnerability to domestic pressures. Both nations may need to strengthen mechanisms for resolving future conflicts. Rebuilding trust and reinforcing shared values will be critical. The challenge is to use this crisis to fortify the relationship for the future. The Alaska transit dispute has grown from a regulatory issue into a diplomatic crisis. What began as Canada's effort to honor environmental and indigenous commitments escalated through political rhetoric and economic threats. The conflict exposes deep interdependence and the complexities of sovereignty in a connected world. The solution lies in negotiation, not escalation, requiring political will and respect for both nations' needs. The crisis is a stress test for the US-Canada alliance, revealing both vulnerabilities and strengths. The future depends on nurturing this partnership and resolving disagreements through dialogue. As both nations face global challenges, their ability to collaborate now will shape their shared future.